The nation remains stunned by these images. Two hooded gunmen escaping in a hail of bullets. A policeman lies on the ground, injured. He's then shot at point-blank range. The men are heard to shout in French, "We have avenged the Prophet Muhammad." Then they drive off. Survivors say the men asked for many of their victims by name and appeared to know that the magazine's editorial meeting was taking place that day.
No, you want to paint the narrative which you think turns immediately, not from the attackers, but on the French society, which you would like to portray. I'm giving you my answer, so why don't you listen to it? Which you would like to portray as somehow anti-Muslim or anti-Islamic or anything like this. Well, let's start from the fact that 12 people were massacred because European citizens asserted their right, which they have every right to do, to draw Muhammad just as they have the right to draw any other historical figure.
Douglas Murray takes on an Al Jazeera journalist, refusing to allow any deflection from the pressing issue of radical Islamic terrorism. In this heated exchange, Murray questions whether free speech can endure under the threat of violent intimidation. He does not hold back, as he reveals the dangerous ideologies behind these attacks and criticizes the media's timid efforts to downplay the severity. This is one confrontation that demands attention.
Do you think this attack will underscore the message of the far right in Europe, at least, of the incompatibility of Islam and the West, or Western values?
That's a pretty atrocious question, if I may say so. We're about 24 hours away from 12 people being gunned down in a newspaper office in the centre of Paris, in a European city, because they offended, allegedly, Islamic blasphemy laws which France, Britain and other European countries do not have and do not believe in and do not follow. And for you to turn the question immediately, not on the people who've been massacred because of asserting their rights as European French citizens, but onto the alleged terrible discrimination of the French is really quite despicable.
So I didn't ask you anything about discrimination of the French. Let me repeat the question
You went straight on to the alleged backlash.
Let me ask you the question again in case you didn't understand it. Do you think this attack, we are in our news bulletins talking in more detail about the actual attack. What you were invited to discuss in this show are the implications of what might follow the attack. Will it underscore the message of those who say there is an incompatibility between Western values and Muslim values?
Do you get the impression that this presenter is on the side of the gunman?
No, you want to paint the narrative which you think turns immediately, not from the attackers, but on the French society, which you would like to portray. I'm giving you my answer, so why don't you listen to it? Which you would like to portray as somehow anti-Muslim or anti-Islamic or anything like this. Well, let's start from the fact that 12 people were massacred because European citizens asserted their right, which they have every right to do, to draw Muhammad just as they have the right to draw any other historical figure, which they believe in or don't believe in. It doesn't matter. They have that right. I don't think at this stage whether, a discussion of the far right in France or anything like that is really the point. The point is people were killed and gunned down for doing their job as journalists and cartoonists in a free society.
OK, let's try with our guest joining us from France. Perhaps she would like to address the question. Do you think there is a message coming out of this, of the incompatibility of Muslim and Western values? It seems our guest in London doesn't want to tackle that. Perhaps you would.
I think that's what the killers would like us to believe. They're French. They were brought up in this country, and they made this choice to become what they've become. They've killed a policeman, for example, who was also from an Algerian background like them, French citizen as well. So I think this is not the issue, and this should never be the issue. This is the issue they want us to address, and they want to make that statement that there is an incompatibility between two worlds. I think they are extremists, and I think we should not let other extremists on the other side who believe that as well, like our extremists here from the right wing or extreme right wing, who believe that there is an incompatibility between an Islamic world and a Western world. I think we should never allow this question to be put.
Now Douglas starts stating a few facts on what needs to be done at this current moment in time.
Douglas, in London, no doubt there will be a lot of thought as to how policy should proceed going forward. What do you think the policy should be? What are the practical policy lessons learnt from this attack?
Well, there are no practical policy lessons learned. People are still mourning the dead and identifying bodies. The thing that is going to happen in the weeks and days ahead is that people are going to have a set of questions. The first will be obvious security questions, simply about how it was that two people were able to go into the office in Paris with Kalashnikovs and gun people down in cold blood. That will certainly be a part of it. There's a technical security discussion to be had. There's also a discussion about wider society and what its reaction should be and all that sort of thing. But really the most febrile and important discussion at the moment is the one that the Free Press is having across Europe, which is whether or not they will stand up and retain the right to do what we in Europe and free peoples have the right to do, which is to draw what we like. And the key message from this really can't be emphasized enough, because, you know, your guest in Doha is a cartoonist. He knows very well that he can't draw a cartoon of Mohammed there. Even if he wanted to, he wouldn't, because his life would be at great risk.
I wouldn't do that
you wouldn't
anyway,
do
sir.
it.
No.
And one of the reasons, you wouldn't do it. Okay,
sir,
maybe it's not just because. Can I just finish my point?
Okay, finish your point. Then we'll give Khalid a chance.
If you are a Muslim, you may decide not to do that. However, in countries like Britain and France, most of us are not Muslims, and we do not believe in Muhammad as the founder of any faith that we follow. People are Christians, atheists, all sorts of things. You cannot expect, and this is the crucial thing.
Now Douglas hits home with some hard fact truths, which these Islamic extremists need to understand.
Muslims should not expect non-Muslims to abide by their own belief systems. You can yourself decide, you as a Muslim do not want to depict Muhammad, but the idea that is coming along in Europe at the moment is a growing idea that people who are not Muslims, who do not believe in Muhammad, who do not follow Islam, are also to be have to obey the rules of Islamic blasphemy. And in Europe at the moment, that is the big debate.
You've made that point, Douglas.
Notice how the Al Jazeera journalist shifts the blame from the terrorists to the victims. Instead of condemning the brutal murders of innocent people, she focuses on alleged discrimination against Muslims in France. This tactic of deflecting and downplaying violence in the name of Islam is common among Islamic apologists. But Douglas Murray doesn't fall for it. He emphasizes that the victims were exercising their fundamental right to free speech, including drawing Muhammad, just as they have the right to depict any other historical figure. The journalist tries to equate right-wing extremism with the global threat posed by radical Islam, but Murray highlights the unique and significant danger of groups like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and Boko Haram. These groups are not fringe elements, but represent a growing threat to global security. The journalist also tries to dodge Murray's point about Islamic blasphemy laws by claiming the attackers were French citizens who chose extremism. However, Murray points out that persecution for apostasy and blasphemy is deeply ingrained in Islamic theology and supported by numerous scholars. Murray argues that in free societies, people have the right to criticize any idea, including religious ones. Muslims should not expect non-Muslims to abide by Islamic blasphemy laws. To demand such conformity is to impose Islamic law on non-Muslims and attack the fundamental freedoms of Western civilization. Murray stands up for these freedoms despite violent intimidation, reminding us of the challenges in defending free speech and Western values against radical Islam. His courage is inspiring, and we must continue to speak out against extremism and defend our fundamental freedoms. If you found this video thought-provoking, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more updates. Let's stand together for truth and freedom.